The clock didn't just strike midnight that night, it detonated everything they had built. At exactly 4:12 in the morning, while Montecito slept under a blanket of perfect California silence, something dark and irreversible began unfolding behind the iron gates of Harry and Meghan's $14 million sanctuary. No warning, no announcement, just shadows, engines humming low, and a prince watching his escape plan collapse in real time. This wasn't a move. This wasn't downsizing. This was the unraveling of a fantasy they sold the world, and now, piece by piece, it was being stripped away before sunrise. And the scariest part? Nobody outside those gates was supposed to see it happen.
The money is officially drying up for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as more and more news of the dissolution.
Because I want privacy. By the time she'd landed, it had become obvious that they were going to sell their souls. Even this, by their standards.
She's still experiencing issues after leaving Meghan's employment, and the way she treated
4:12 in the morning, January 31st, Montecito, California. The kind of hour where even secrets usually stay asleep. But not this one. No, this secret was alive, breathing, and bleeding through the darkness. Because inside the sprawling estate, once presented as their forever kingdom, everything was collapsing. Not metaphorically, literally. The California dream they escaped to, the dream they defended, monetized, and weaponized was being dismantled in silence, and nobody dared say it out loud yet. Why would a prince run in the middle of the night? Why would someone who once stood on palace balconies now stand behind service gates, watching his life get loaded into crates like evidence? Because this wasn't a happy ending. This was the moment reality finally caught up.
Divorce from Prince Harry, I got the inside story.
A seismic shock wave has just swept.
At 3:15 a.m., Montecito was dead. No paparazzi, no flashing cameras, no cheering fans, just darkness and then movement. Heavy lift trucks crept through the rear service gate, avoiding the main entrance like fugitives avoiding surveillance. Not movers, not casual relocation crews. These were industrial transport units, the kind used when something serious is being extracted, something expensive, something sensitive, something you don't want the world to see leaving. And then came the crates, 12 of them, massive, industrial-sized, cold, anonymous containers swallowing whatever remained of their empire, each one stamped with priority labels, screaming urgency without making a sound. Nobody laughed, nobody talked, no friendly chatter, just silent hands moving fast like they were racing against time itself.
This source you have, this person who is still traumatized by, I shouldn't laugh, but by their time with...
Inside the mansion, chaos didn't look loud. It looked suffocating. Meghan's voice echoed through marble hallways, sharp and panicked, slicing through the silence like broken glass. She wasn't whispering anymore. She wasn't performing. She was furious, cornered, desperate. "We're being hunted," she allegedly said, her voice shaking between rage and disbelief. Hunted, not pressured, not criticized, hunted. That word hung in the air like smoke after an explosion, because hunted meant something bigger, something darker, something irreversible. It meant they weren't leaving because they wanted to. They were leaving because they had to. And outside, Harry wasn't commanding the operation. He wasn't giving orders. He wasn't acting like a prince. He was pacing back and forth, back and forth. A man trapped between what he escaped and what he had become. Witnesses said he looked hollow, like something inside him had finally snapped, like he hadn't slept in days. And then, quietly, almost like he didn't mean to say it out loud, he muttered the sentence that would define everything: "It was never supposed to end like this." That wasn't anger. That was regret, because he remembered the promise, the fantasy, the story they sold themselves. California wasn't supposed to be exile. It was supposed to be freedom, a power, independence, a fresh start where nobody could touch them. But freedom has a price. And now the bill had arrived. Nobody talked about the money openly at first. They couldn't, because the numbers were humiliating, terrifying, devastating. $8,200 a day. That's what it cost just to exist in that mansion. Not thrive, not build, not grow, exist. Security alone drained nearly $3 million a year. Guards watching every angle, protecting a life that had become both fortress and prison. Property taxes climbed higher. Maintenance bills piled up like accusations. Staff salaries, utilities, hidden repairs, every single dollar tightening the noose. And then came the loan. $4.2 million borrowed against the very house they claimed was their independence. Money secured not just by property, but by identity, by his name, his title, his bloodline. A prince leveraging royalty to survive in exile. Some say when Charles learned about it, the reaction wasn't emotional. It was cold, calculated, final. Because in that moment, something broke that couldn't be repaired. disappeared. The safety net disappeared. And suddenly, survival wasn't a metaphor anymore. It was literal. Inside the house, Meghan wasn't planning anymore. She was fighting to hold together something that was already slipping through her fingers. Every deal, every partnership, every carefully constructed brand, all of it suddenly fragile. Hollywood had stopped answering. That was the real betrayal, because Hollywood doesn't love people. Hollywood loves winners, and the moment someone smells weakness, they vanish. Calls stopped being returned. Meetings disappeared. Promises evaporated. People who once welcomed them with open arms now kept their distance like failure was contagious. It wasn't dramatic, it was worse. It was silent. And silence is how exile begins. Harry felt it most in the quiet moments, when nobody was watching, when the trucks kept loading, when the walls echoed with memories instead of hope. Because deep down, he knew something terrifying. He didn't just leave the palace, he had lost his place in the world. Every crate carried more than belongings. It carried expectations, illusions, mistakes. Every sealed container was another reminder that the life he traded everything for was slipping away. This wasn't the triumphant reinvention they promised. This was retreat. Strategic, quiet, humiliating retreat. By sunrise, it was done. No announcement, no explanation, just emptiness where an empire once stood. And as the Pacific light crept across the estate, illuminating the aftermath, one truth became impossible to ignore. The Montecito dream hadn't just ended. It had been erased. And the most haunting part wasn't what left the house, it was what stayed behind. The silence, the regret, the realization that freedom, once claimed, had become something else entirely. Because after the trucks disappeared, after the last crate vanished into the darkness, after the illusion of control finally slipped through their fingers, something even colder settled over Harry and Meghan's world. Isolation. Not the kind you choose, the kind forced on you, the kind where the phone stops ringing and stays silent. At first, Meghan refused to accept it. She paced through rooms that still smelled like expensive candles and ambition, gripping her phone like it owed her loyalty. She called advisors, agents, people who once answered on the first ring, people who once begged to be in their orbit. Now, voicemail, polite silence, careful distance. Because the truth Hollywood never admits out loud is brutal, proximity is transactional, and Harry and Meghan's value wasn't rising anymore. It was falling rapidly, irreversibly. Every frozen deal, every postponed meeting, every ignored message was another quiet confirmation of something they never believed could happen. They were becoming irrelevant, and irrelevance is Hollywood's cruelest execution. Meghan allegedly sat in the study one night, staring at spreadsheets that didn't lie. The numbers bled red across the screen. Millions promised but never delivered. Contracts paused. Opportunities under review. That phrase, under review, the industry's favorite way of saying goodbye without saying goodbye. She had built her entire reinvention on momentum, on perception, on forward motion, but now everything had stalled. And when momentum dies, so does power. Harry felt it differently. For him, it wasn't just financial collapse, it was personal extinction, because there was one number he couldn't escape: 0. That's how many calls came back from London. Not from his father, not from his brother, not from anyone. The line that once connected him to centuries of identity had gone completely dead. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He realized it one night standing alone at Butterfly Beach. No cameras, no security hovering nearby, just him and the ocean and the sound of waves crashing like reminders of everything he'd lost. He sat there for almost an hour, motionless, staring into darkness like he was searching for answers buried somewhere beneath the surface. Witnesses said he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even check his phone, because what was there to check? Nobody was calling, nobody was coming, and for the first time in his life, Harry wasn't a prince. He was just a man who had nowhere left to go. Back inside the house, Meghan was still fighting, still refusing to accept defeat, because to her, defeat wasn't just financial ruin, it was humiliation. She had sold the world a narrative of strength, of independence, of breaking free. She had convinced millions they were untouchable. Now that illusion was collapsing publicly, quietly, cruelly, and she could feel it. She reportedly told someone close to her they want to see us fall, not criticized, not corrected, fall. Because once you rise high enough, people don't just watch your success, they wait for your collapse. And collapse was no longer theoretical. It was logistical. The house itself had become the final liability. The place that symbolized their escape was now the anchor dragging them under. Every square foot carried financial weight. Every luxury feature came with invisible cost. Selling it wasn't optional anymore. anymore, it was survival. But selling meant admitting something they had never admitted publicly. California wasn't forever. California was temporary, and that truth cut deeper than anything else, because California wasn't just a location, it was their rebellion, their declaration, their proof they didn't need the monarchy. Now, selling it meant something unspoken but obvious. Maybe they did. Meanwhile, whispers started spreading, quiet conversations behind closed doors. People close to the situation began speculating about scenarios nobody dared say publicly. One possibility was quiet surrender. Sell the house, pay off the debt, disappear into a smaller, quieter existence, fade into celebrity background noise. Another possibility was far more explosive. Tell everything. Expose everything. Turn betrayal into profit, because controversy still sells, even when power doesn't. But there was a third possibility, the one nobody wanted to say out loud: Harry returning alone. It sounds impossible until it doesn't, because exile changes people, isolation reshapes identity, and desperation forces decisions pride never would. Some insiders believed Harry had already considered it, that he had stood on those cliffs overlooking the Pacific, staring across an ocean that separated him from everything he used to be, wondering whether freedom had been worth the cost, because freedom had turned out to be expensive, emotionally, financially, existentially. And the cruelest part, there was no rewind button, no undo option, no safe return to the moment before everything changed. He had chosen this path, and now he had to live with it. Inside their world, even their children had become silent witnesses to a reality they couldn't yet understand. Archie and Lilibet were too young to grasp what was happening, but they could feel it. Children always do. The tension, the instability, the invisible cracks spreading through the foundation of their lives. They didn't ask for exile, they inherited it. They didn't choose division, they were born into it. And someday, they would ask questions nobody would know how to answer. Why did we leave? Why didn't they call? Why did everything change? Those questions don't disappear. They wait, they grow, they demand truth. And truth has a way of surfacing eventually. As the Montecito house sat quieter than ever before, stripped of its certainty, stripped of its illusion of permanence, stripped of its future, one fact became undeniable. This wasn't just a real estate transaction. It was the end of an era, not announced, not celebrated, just quietly erased under cover of darkness. The prince who once stood at the center of the world now stood at its edge, staring into uncertainty with nothing but memory behind him and nothing but questions ahead. Because in the end, the Montecito escape hadn't freed them. It had exposed them, exposed how fragile independence can be, exposed how quickly influence evaporates, exposed how power, once surrendered, rarely returns. And as the gates closed behind those trucks for the final time, carrying away the last physical remnants of their California dream, one haunting truth lingered in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. They didn't just lose a house, they lost the life they thought they could build without consequences. And now, for the first time since walking away from royalty, Harry and Meghan weren't running towards something. They were running out of options.